Thank you for coming to the Awaken Life podcast. I'm your host, Scott Landis. How can you live an absolutely fulfilling and purpose-filled life, maintain a passionate, intimate relationship, all while raising kids and growing multiple streams of income? That's the big question we seek to answer on this podcast by interviewing people who are already doing it. One thing we know for sure is it takes a community to do it well. So thank you for being a part of the Awaken Life community. I'm looking forward to growing with you, and on to the episode. Welcome to the Awaken Life podcast with Scott Landis. And today my guest is Jodi Brandstetter, who is an Amazon bestselling author and publisher with over 20 years of HR, talent, and business experience. She is from the Hoosier State with a career trajectory that evolved from aspiring to be a chief talent officer to becoming a business owner. The entrepreneurial journey provided her with invaluable insights into the importance of business acumen for HR professionals aiming for executive or entrepreneurial positions. She's a best-selling author and publisher who lives outside of Cincinnati, Ohio with her husband, daughter, and fur babies. She's the author of Hire by Design and HR by Design and other titles, and a lead instructor at Design Brainery and Virtual Academy. You can find out more about her at jodibrandstetter.com. Jodi, thanks so much for being here with me. I appreciate your time. How are you today?
I am awesome, Scott, and thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. So yeah, we were introduced by Melanie, right?
Yes.
And we were just talking about Jeff Baedo, who's been on the show, and we're kind of running in some similar circles here, but the HR world is still kind of new to me. So I'm excited to, I am hopefully not the only person who is interested in the HR world, but you're a good person to talk about that topic with. But yeah, what is the first thing that we need to know when it comes to that for somebody who's a novice in this world?
Well, I think the first thing we all have to agree on is that we're all human. And so your HR professional or whoever's handling those pieces are human. And so we all make mistakes, we all fail, but we're all trying to do our best. I think a lot of times there's a persona of HR where they know it all, or, they're the party police, or, there's all these, negative ideas around HR. But the first thing I think everyone needs to understand is that we're human, just like you are. We're an employee, just like you are. It's just our goal is to make sure that we have an organization, a work environment that works well for the employees, and that we're really focused on helping the business be successful, but 100% through the human capital area.
Nice. And that's mostly directed at the employee, right? And when you look at it from a business owner's perspective, you might have a different perspective. A lot of my audience is probably looking at growing into a place where they're like for the first time thinking about HR, and it's just a foreign idea. Like maybe they used to work in the corporate world and there was an HR department, but what about for the business owner? What do they need to know?
The business owner needs to understand that their HR professional is their partner. We're here to help them. A lot of times when I'm talking to business owners, I'm talking about risk, and I'm explaining to them, if they do X, this is the type of risk that's going to be involved. So you as a business owner, cannot know all the laws and regulations out there in the world. There's a lot for the personnel side of the world, as well as not really knowing maybe how to hire a person, how to do a pay increase, do a performance review, fire someone. So your HR person should be your go-to for those type of concerns or those type of questions, so that one, your company doesn't have any liability issues, doesn't get sued. But two, to make sure that you can grow, you can scale with the right workforce.
Okay, so knowing a lot of partnering with the business owner, being up on laws and regulations, and don't fall into any like whoops, didn't mean to fall into that hole, right? Kind of keeping you from doing that. So I recently had a guest on the podcast, Alexander Devendra, who's a business attorney. So from the legal perspective, like where is there crossover? Where is it different?
There's definitely a lot of connection between your business attorney as well as your HR professional. So they should
Okay.
be partners.
Okay.
Again, I always say I'm not an attorney, so
Mhm.
don't look at me as a lawyer, but
Mhm.
I do know what laws that a business needs to follow when they hit so many employees, so like a certain threshold, right? So you work really hand in hand with both of them. And a lot of times, what really helps a business owner is giving that relationship to the employee attorney or to the company's attorney to the HR professional when it has to go with employment law. One, it takes that conversation out of your hands as a business owner. You get to do what
Mm.
you love to do. There's a purpose, right, to becoming a business owner, and it's not to know all of the HR laws and regulations. So it lets you focus on that. And then it lets your two experts talk together and be able to collaborate and then be able to come to you and say, here are the options. How do you want to move forward?
Yeah, that sounds great. And so, but your specific niche, you're actually working with HR professionals. That's your main gig, is that right?
Yeah, so I've been in HR for 20 plus years, and I really see the industry as a huge need for where we're going with the future
Mm.
of work. And
Okay.
so I'm trying to help HR professionals get to be more strategic in their role, be more of that partner with the business owner
Mm.
or the executive team, so that we are able to kind of move forward with everything that's going on with technology, with the limited resources we have. I mean, there's not as many people that as what we need for openings right now. So,
Mhm.
these are things that an HR professional can help strategically with for the
Mhm.
business. But if they don't talk the business, they're not going to listen to us. And so that's why we have to have a nice kind of business acumen with also being that HR expert.
Okay, so it makes me assume that in the past, HR professionals weren't so good at kind of coming in as a strategic partner with the business owner. Is that right?
I would say businesses did not see HR as a strategic partner. They saw
Okay,
HR as an administrative function. They
gotcha.
saw HR as a cost center. They saw the HR as a department that doesn't actually bring profit into the organization. And so when a
Mhm.
business leader has that perspective of a department, IT had to go through this themselves. It
Mm.
happened mostly after Y2K. But there's, when you have that perspective, you're making assumptions that this person doesn't know anything else about the rest of the business. They can't actually provide value. So there's a lot that, as far as like almost like a PR campaign that we need to be
Mm.
doing in HR, saying, hey, wait, no, we know your people. We know how to, work through a lot of difficult situations. We can help you with your soft skills, your EQ. I mean, there's so much that we do.
Mm.
But one of the ways we're going to be able to do that is that we're going to have technology that's going to be able to handle all the administrative functions that we used to do so that we
Mm.
can, really kind of dive in and be a part of that strategic team.
Fantastic. So it's really this is opening my eyes. I've been recently um, interviewing and talking to a lot of like CFO, a lot of fractional. That's probably the best way of saying it. And so this is really reminding me of that kind of category, like this kind of this interim place of business where you're going from maybe solo entrepreneur, you're starting to actually build a sustainable business, and you're looking for those strategic partners that can fill the department head roles, but you can't afford to hire or, get to that place where you got a full-time person. So fractionals been talking a lot to them. And I've understood that the CFO role can be a really strong strategic partner. And now you're opening my eyes to see that from the HR side. So that's really refreshing. Good for me to know. Yeah. What else?
Yeah, and there's a lot of fractional HR consultants out there who can come into an organization and help in project work or, part-time work, because I agree, if there's a certain time where you don't need a full-time HR person, they don't have enough work to do that. And so instead of trying to find that, find someone who'll be full-time for you, there's some amazing either organizations or solopreneurs. There's also POEs, which actually help not just with HR, but benefits, as well as, of course, you're going to ask me that, and I can't remember what it actually stands for.
As long as you describe it, it's fine.
Yeah. So there's organizations out there that actually will help you with understanding what your benefits are, like what benefits you should offer. But they also can do HR services. They could be a fractional HR person for you. They can also do recruiting and hiring for you. So it's a different way that smaller organizations can actually have almost like their own HR department, but that HR department is working with multiple little companies to keep their time together so that you're not, trying to bring that full-time person in. So that's a great way for an organization that's looking to bring a fractional HR person in. But there's also HR consulting companies that can also do the exact same thing, but those don't usually broker benefits and do those pieces.
Okay. So if you're in this, I thought you froze for a second there. Yeah. All right, we're good. All right. So there's some choices for somebody who's in this interim stage of growing their business. POE is be one of them. You could do a fractional HR person. You could get a HR consulting firm. All of those are options to consider. Is that what I'm hearing?
Absolutely. And they also will help with payroll sometimes as well. And I know that to me, when you first start a business and you hire an employee, that's number one priority to maintain employees, right? You got to pay them. You got to pay them on time and you have to pay them correctly. That's huge for someone. So, that's something else that an HR or firm, POE, those can also help you with processing payroll.
Okay, cool. And I would assume, so you're not necessarily someone who is in the business of doing like the fractional HR position, are you?
Yeah, I kind of do that too, Scott. As an entrepreneur, I'm, always open to helping organizations the best way that I can. I like to connect people too, right? So if I don't feel like I'm the best fit or I'm not the expert they need, I'd rather connect them to someone who is. But like right now I am working with a small business and helping them, put an HR system into place. So they had payroll, but everything else was kind of spreadsheets. And so they really wanted to, go to that next step of having an actual system that they can do performance reviews. They could hire someone through an applicant tracking system. And so right now I'm helping them with building out that HR system, which also includes me providing consultation as far as, what kind of handbook they should have, and, doing some, what I would call more HR fractional type services for them. But it really just kind of depends. I look at my customers or my clients and try to see, can I help them? Am I the right person? And if I am, awesome. And if I'm not, I'll find you someone better, so that you can get the right, expertise. Because the worst thing to do is to hire the wrong person for the wrong job. If it's a consultant, if it's an employee, if it's a contractor, you don't want to do that because it makes it really hard for you to want to do it again.
Yeah, you can waste a lot of money and set back your business. There's all sorts of reasons to hire well and pick the right person for sure.
Yeah, it hurts your confidence. I mean, it just alone, like you hire one bad apple and you don't want to do it again because you don't want to hire another bad apple. But I will tell you that everyone hires bad apples. That's part of life. I've recruited and hired thousands of people, and I have lots of failures of bad apples that I've hired myself. So it happens to us all. It's just more of, learning from it and growing from it, and then doing a better job next time.
That's good. Okay, well, I want to come back to, let's put your profession aside for a second. I want to go into your story, which is what I do on this show. But I guess just to kind of put a bow on what we were just talking about, I was suspecting, because of your unique place, that it sounds like you can do the work as a fractional or a consultant for somebody in my audience who's growing into that space. But I would imagine lots of people that you could refer them to as well. And so truly a great resource to have for my audience to get a hold of you and get some advice. Thinking about this area, where should I go? It sounds like you'd be a great place to contact for that. So that's great. So I want to go into your backstory, which will lead up to how did we get to this place in your business. But start as far back as you want. Like, did you grow up in, in the bio, you're from the Hoosier State, but did you grow up in that area? Like, what's the growing up time look like?
So absolutely. So I was born and raised in Indiana. I was there all the way through college. I lived outside of Indianapolis, Indiana. And then I moved to a little town called Lawrenceburg, Indiana. We have casinos, but we're most well known for Seagram's, which is a distillery. So if you've ever had a wine cooler back in the 90s, it was probably a Seagram's cooler, or Seagram's 7 is another popular one.
Oh, I've got the commercial, the song in my head from, what's that guy? What's the actor's name? Who was in Die Hard?
Oh, wait, is that Willis?
Yeah, Bruce Willis. Yeah,
Bruce
he
Willis?
was singing the Seagram's Golden Wine Cooler song back in probably the 80s.
Probably. My college roommate got so excited. She was drinking a wine cooler before she went to college. Obviously not legal, but she looked at it and said Lawrenceburg, Indiana, and she ran around and told everyone that her roommate was from where this was made.
Wow.
So yeah, and then
that's street cred right there.
Street cred, absolutely. But then I went to college in Evansville, and that is where I actually figured out I wanted to be in HR, was through an HR internship at a local hospital. I was recruiting patient care techs, and I was also helping with benefit enrollment. And I just saw it as a really interesting industry. And my purpose here on earth is to help people. And so it felt like it was a really good area for me to focus on. So I actually changed my major from finance to management, and started my HR, literally got into HR right after college, and have pretty much been in it ever since. So I've been mostly in the talent acquisition recruiting space, and I've worked for Fortune 500 companies. I've worked for staffing agencies. I've worked with temp placement. I've worked with small, mid-sized companies. I was just at a career transition group, and they were like, what do you recruit for? And I was like, I've kind of recruited for everything in my career, from high volume recruiting to niche recruiting. You name it, I've probably recruited it before. And I started my entrepreneur journey in 2018 when my daughter was 3 years old, and I was tired of traveling around and wanted to be home. And really at that time I was a director level, and that level meant travel for every organization out there. I couldn't find anything where they wouldn't make me travel. So I thought, well, maybe I should give this a go and start my own business and see what happens. And I've been doing that ever since. I want to
unpack that. So, and that's, fellow entrepreneurs. My assumption is everyone listening is probably some kind of entrepreneur, business owner, growing. And I'm always curious, especially when you went through from something that was very stable. This is a theme of the show, like going from something stable, and basically, you can project, oh, I know when I'm going to retire, the 401k will be this much. And there's so much certainty with that lifestyle. And then you come into start your own business, become an entrepreneur, and you can kiss all that goodbye. You know, you might be able to retain some of what you've built, but as far as the certainty goes, there's nothing certain, right? It feels like there's nothing certain. And so you really have to find something deeper that keeps you going, that gives you because we need certainty, we need some certainty, but it's not the benefits, it's not the 401k anymore, it's not the predictable paycheck. We find it in something else. So can you unpack a little bit more? You had your 3-year-old daughter, that's probably part of it, but what else was going on there?
Yeah, my daughter was a big one. I mean, just to tell you, I was, I still am to this day, type A crazy. So I'm very motivated. Always want to, I go too fast. Like I always joke, I go 100 miles an hour and the speed limit's 50, with everything that I do in life. And, I was doing that at my company. I was working at the organization I was at, I was working 60 plus hours a week. And I literally gave birth to my daughter 5 weeks early. And I'm pretty sure stress had something to do with that. And went on maternity leave, tried not to work, tried really hard. I mean, I planned so many things. Like I organized the house. I did whatever I could. Cause unfortunately, people might get mad at me, but, taking care of my baby wasn't enough. I needed more to do.
Sure.
Because I'm type A crazy. Yes. So when I came back, I realized, and I did this to my own employees, they didn't look at me differently. They didn't say, oh, here's someone who has like this baby that she has to take care of at home. Like I have to keep her alive. Like it's a big part of life now.
Sure.
They just expected Jodi, who worked 60 hours a week, would come back and just be the same person. So within 3 months, I was traveling again. I was crying every day. I was leaving my child at home, expecting my husband to, handle so much of that. And he was brilliant at it. He's an amazing partner. But that was really frustrating.
The wake up call.
And, and I also had a moment where my manager told me that I was the cheapest person on our team because even though I was the most expensive. So my salary was probably one of the top, but the amount of hours I put in, if you divided it by your hours, I was probably one of the
ROI on you.
Yes. And that was hard to hear because it's like, wait,
could have been phrased a little better, I bet.
we were very, very close. And I appreciate her saying that to me because no one had ever told me, no one ever said it to me in a way where I was like, it hit me like, oh man, like getting paid pennies here because of how much time I'm spending at work. And so I think that, and wanting to be home with my daughter, and I've done like little side hustles, right? Just to do like something fun. And I thought I might as well jump in and try it out. I know that I'm an employable person. So if it didn't work, I would find a job. I had no problem. Like I was very confident in my capabilities of going and finding a full-time job if I needed to. But I also knew that I have work ethic like no one else, and that I would find people. In fact, I already had a client before I left my full-time gig, and it was a full-time client. It was a maternity leave situation where I was being a recruiter. I was taking someone's desk and recruiting while they were on leave. And so I instantly was already making money. So that was really important to me. And then I realized that wasn't as important to me. I didn't want to go back into a company and be sitting there 8 hours a day doing a job. Like I wanted to be I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And so that was the journey of learning that money wasn't as important to me. The purpose was helping companies be successful in my own way. And I get to make those decisions. I get to say if I'm traveling. I get to say if I'm going into an office. I get to say if I'm taking a nap this afternoon instead of working. Like having that ownership of me was very important.
Yeah, I hear you. And there's a stark contrast there to be seen as, from a business's perspective, as a good deal, getting a great ROI, like I'm only paying you this much, I'm getting this much. And then on the other side of the table is the cost that you feel to your child, right? I think
Mhm.
any parent entrepreneur listening can feel that with you. Like that puts it in perspective. Like, what's the cost of this? Like, and then coming to that place where, okay, realizing money's not the motivator here. What's the deeper thing? And you decided, helping companies be successful while being autonomous and deciding, your fate and deciding what you do decision by decision, so
Yeah.
that probably you could have that relationship, that new relationship in your life, be not experience a cost, right? There's always a cost, right?
Yes,
but to lessen that, right? To make that as
absolutely.
expensive as possible.
Yeah. I mean, it is. It's one of those things where the one thing I say about being an entrepreneur, it's ever evolving. You never, like, I have changed my services, the ways I think, what I do in so many different ways through
Sure.
these 5 years.
Mhm.
And, but I've also noticed that, yes, a company loved that I worked 60 hours a week for them.
Mhm.
But they didn't force me to do that. I did that to
Sure,
myself.
sure.
They just liked it. They
Yeah,
liked it.
they
But
benefited.
then, but I realized that after the fact, right? Because when you're in it, you kind of just say, what's my company's fault, right? They're making me
Mhm.
do this. Like, they
Sure.
expect this from me. But then when you do it to yourself, and you do literally doing it to yourself, you're the boss, and you're telling yourself you have to work all these crazy hours, then all of a sudden you
Mm,
realize, like, oh, I'm the problem. I need to
mm,
fix this. I need to learn
sure.
why I'm doing this. But then what was really cool was I had a client who really, it was my maternity leave clients, where I would do recruiting for them. They really needed help. And they were like, we'll take 10 hours of Jodi because we know that's 40 hours of someone else. And so all of a
Mm,
sudden, that power of being good at what I did was a
yeah, the
positive for
reputation.
me.
Yeah,
Yeah, like I was able to say, well, I can only do 10 hours. And they're like, that's fine, because that we know what that equates to
right.
when by somebody else. And so it was kind of flipped from, well, you aren't making, you're not making as the money because you're working so many hours, like you're the workhorse, to I can take this workhorse and only have her work so many hours, but I know I'm going to get the same return on investment as someone
Mhm.
else with more
Yeah.
hours. So that was nice to see that a client recognized that in me.
Yeah, that's awesome. So as a business owner, like the journey, it's, start up, get profitable, start to uh, build in some systems and teams and processes so you can start to free up from the business, and the goal being that you have an asset that can run without you or maybe even sell someday. So where are you in that journey?
So that's a great journey, right? It's like every entrepreneur. Like
It's
I
a
would,
very windy road.
if I heard this on the podcast, I'd be like, what are they going to say? I think that I am on my way to building a system, this virtual academy that I'm
Mhm.
building for HR professionals, where um, it's not just me. I'm not the only one working it.
Mhm.
That I can provide, a platform for others to put their courses on, which means that I'm helping the students without it being me. So I feel like I'm
Mm.
kind of on that way to having some like strong system for where it's like profiting, right? Like, because I
Mhm.
have great systems to, like a CRM system that's going to help me like with marketing and stuff. But
Mhm.
I'm thinking if I want to scale and be profitable and have residual income, I need to have systems where money's coming in versus just me telling people about me. So I feel like
Sure.
I'm getting a little bit more honed in there. I also
Mhm.
think that I've learned about myself that maybe at this moment in my career and my entrepreneur journey, I don't know if I really need employees. I need experts here and there. And so having
Mhm.
project work and working with people who like that is kind of
Mhm.
where I'm at.
Right.
versus having employees. And that's a hard thing to learn, actually. Like if you have that traditional mindset of what a successful company looks like. Growing up, I thought if I was going to make a company, I would need a building, I would need employees, I
Right.
would need a product or service that was selling. And that if I never got to that, was I ever successful? Like there was just like this assumption, just like when I was, my other assumption growing up was I had to graduate college, get married, and have kids in that order. And it never dawned on me that maybe I didn't have to do it that way, or maybe I don't need employees. And so that has been a journey because I've had a lot of assumptions in myself and what I think a successful business looks like. And now I can say a successful business can be a business partner. It could be employees. It could be project work with contractors, 1099s. It could just be me. It's up to the person who's building it to make that decision.
Yeah, I mean, I can totally relate. I mean, I'm seeing, I mean, obviously times have changed. Technology, innovation has changed and made those opportunities available. In some ways, maybe it's way easier to scale a business, but you have to think about it differently. And it sounds simple to say that, but as I'm going through that process as well, I'm having epiphanies every week, like, oh yeah, that's a blind spot, or oh yeah, that's an assumption that was there. Is that a real thing? Like literally just had one yesterday where I was talking to a guy that I've considered a partner. I'm like, I really just need to realize that this business has been entrusted to me. This is some kind of like philosophical language that I use, but the business Awaken Life has been entrusted to me. It's not necessarily my business, but I've been acting as if it is. Like I've had my grip so tight around it. It's like I've been inviting people to be partners with me, but not making it possible for them to partner with me. And that was my epiphany just recently. I'm like, oh, okay, if I just let go and let people like work with me, we could probably scale this thing a lot quicker. So that was just a personal experience. Can you relate to that at all?
Absolutely. I mean, I can't tell you how many times that I literally just had these like very specific expectations of what I or someone else is supposed to do. And then afterwards go, oh my gosh, why? Why was I so honed in, so focused on it having to be this way? I was just talking to a client who was thinking about getting a full-time person, and they're like, we found this other person who's part-time who can do this part of the job. So I'm not sure how we're going to do this other part. And the first thing I said, well, that part-time person needs to be hourly and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like saying things that my corporate mouth says without even thinking about it. And then all of a sudden I step back and I said, wait a minute. I go, no, you know what? You have an option here.
Yeah.
That part-time person could absolutely be salaried if it makes sense. We can work through that. Or if you want hourly, we can work through that too, to make sure you have the ability for them to clock in and clock out. Cause right now everyone's salaried. So, but I instantly went to corporate Jodi.
Right.
Without even thinking.
So easy.
It's so easy. And it took me probably about 5 minutes to go back and say, wait a minute, let me circle back. I think we could, if you want, you talk to the CEO, find out what you want to do, and I can help you. Like I can absolutely help you with this. But I instantly, went straight to what I was, I guess, brought up to say in corporate HR.
Sure. And okay, I just have to plug the Waking Life Executive Mastermind group is something that we have these kind of conversations where you have a peer advisory board, a mastermind session where you think through these things. But so anyways, if you're listening, if you're interested in that, get a hold of me. But this is what we do. We challenge assumption. It's not just about HR. It's not just about putting the CEO hat on. It's not just about, the next growth thing. We have assumptions about everything, about parenting, about being a good spouse, about everything, literally everything. We have these built-in assumptions that they're so built in, we can hardly see them. So this is the benefit of getting around some trusted people that you plug into that can say, hey, you know what, like you just demonstrated there, you know what, we could probably do it this way. You know, have you thought about doing it this way? Why are you always doing it that way? Is there another alternative? And these questions like get us to quicker to these epiphanies, right? Have you been and had this experience and been in a mastermind group like that?
I have been with, I've done a couple masterminds, but and what I really love is absolutely what you were just talking about, just like coming in and saying, you know, this is what I'm thinking. What would you do? You know, and just getting that other perspective from someone else who either, I think the last kind of mastermind I was in was more of like a women's owner type masterminds. We all owned businesses, but they were all different. So even getting, you know, what would you do? And I'm a service provider, and someone who sells products say, well, have you thought about this? It gets amazing.
Yeah.
What you can learn from other industries that you can then take back to your own and help you do better at what you're doing. You know, like just looking at, like I always say, like in recruiting, we should be looking at what marketers and what salespeople are doing at all times, and we should be mimicking them. But as a recruiter, because we are the face of the organization, we are the one who's supposed to be kind of selling the opportunity to the candidate. We are marketing those opportunities to them. So what are the best marketing strategies that you would use? So it's not, you know, a job description thrown on Indeed, right? Like that's not what a marketer would do. You know, a marketer would make it a advertisement and make it, you know, talk about the positives and make it feel like, oh, I want to work at this organization. So being willing to look at other industries or other parts of the company and learn from them is huge. So important. It's amazing what you can do with that.
That's great. Let's dive into, I mean, you've written lots of books. So you obviously have organized thoughts and information. So that was just the first of a few tips that I'd love to get from you. So if you're in HR, maybe think like a marketer, right? What are some other great points, like from your books, or just whatever comes to mind? Good tips.
So something that I'm a huge advocate for HR is utilizing design thinking for the methodology to solve either hiring or HR challenges. So a lot of times, you know, when we have a challenge in HR, we might just go ask a peer and say, well, what did you do? And then we just implement that. Or we might just, you know, find some information online and just go with it. When, you know, when you think about your organization, you have your own employees, you have your own products, your own services, you have your own customers. So going to someone else and saying, what do you do? And just implementing it doesn't mean it's going to solve your problem, because they might have different customers, different employees. So what design thinking does, it helps you kind of put yourself in your employee or client shoes and understand, well, what are they looking for from me? But then it also looks at, well, if I'm going to make this change in the process or change of the business, how is that going to impact the business? Can we afford it? Is it viable? Is it feasible for the organization to do it? So one tip would be, in my opinion, is that HR should be using design thinking when they're making these different changes, and it will help improve employee engagement, candidate engagement, and it 100% will help you be that strategic partner for your business, because they see that you care about how it's going to impact the business, not just how it's going to impact the employee. And I've wrote 2 books about that. So that's Hire by Design and HR by Design. That literally is my biggest thing for people, is like, just check it out. It's amazing. You've already been doing it. I guarantee you have, it's ideation, which is brainstorming. So if you ever done a brainstorming session, guess what? You've already done a step of design thinking. If you've ever created a draft of anything, that's a prototype. You have done design thinking. If you've ever reached out and done a focus group and asked questions of your employee or your client or your customer, That is part of design thinking. So it's just now putting it in a very structured way that you're really using all those tools at once to come up with the best solution for your business and for your employees or customers or whoever you're targeting with solving their problem.
Yeah, I love that. So focus groups get mentioned a lot, but I think a lot of times we don't do them because it sounds so fancy and so big corporate-y. But how can a solo entrepreneur or small business owner do focus groups effectively?
So I would take the focus group and throw it away, and I would do something different.
Okay.
I would do observation and interviewing. So observation is if you would have the ability to watch someone who's doing what you're trying to solve, right? So I went through IDOU for their certification as a design thinking professional. And one of the things the challenge I had was to understand why kids weren't utilizing the library as much. And so I went to a library and sat there and observed. I went into the kids section and I just went around just to, kind of just see the land and make notes and kind of understand, would I want to sit here? Would I want to look at these books? Would I want to play here? And then I went and observed a bookstore and looked at what they had and looked at the colors and the, all the books and everything. So observation is really just feeling out the land of who you're trying to, work with. So if you're trying to understand your team and you sit in an office, you get out of your office and you sit with them. Do you talk to them? No, just do your work, but you're just listening and observing them, right? If you have the ability to see your product in action with a customer, do that so you can kind of see how's that look, how's that feel? And then you interview them. So once you do that whole kind of observing, getting a feel, taking some notes, getting some insights, then you ask them actual questions like, well, how did you feel about this? Or can you tell me what happened when this happened, when you did this? So you're actually gathering information from them through an interview. And then you'll get a better true result of understanding your audience. Focus groups are great, but a lot of times focus groups say what you think you want them to say.
Okay.
Whereas if you're observing the person and you're asking very specific things about what they did, they're not going to really tell you what you want to hear. They're just going to answer your question and say, well, I did that because this part doesn't work, or I always have a problem with this one thing. And so I figured out if I do it this way, it works. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, my product is not working for my customer, but she fixed it for me. So now I know how to fix it because she finagled it herself. And now I can take that back and fix it and give her a product that works for her. So it's really more of a hands-on experience. It's hard to do. You have to figure out a way to do it, but it's easier to watch someone than try to find 10 people to be in a focus group.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So the first step of observation, you're taking a whole bunch of notes about what you see. And then from there, you might have some curiosity, some questions, but you hold those until you have the chance to complete the observation. Then you ask the questions. Okay, when this happened, when you did that, what was behind that? What made you do that? Or why did you decide that? And you're just being very, very curious.
Yep. I can give you an example from my past. I was an IT recruiter for a staffing agency, and I was transitioning into being their system admin user, like their super user for their CRM/applicant tracking system. And I was watching our top producing IT recruiter, and she was on a phone interview, and all of a sudden she opened up and she had these cards that she put in front of her, and she's talking on the phone with this candidate and taking her notes. And I'm just watching her and observing her. I can hear what she's asking to the candidate. And so afterwards, I just asked, I'm like, what's these what's this note that you have? She's like, well, those are my questions for a project manager. I go, okay. She goes, I asked every single one because this is how I can build out an amazing candidate sizzle for our client. And I said, well, why these notebook? Like, why, these index cards? And she's like, I don't know, it's just what I've always used. I've had them, like she had been an IT recruiter in multiple companies. So she had brought these from each company. She's used these cards. And I said, well, what if I built in the system an interview guide? And in that interview guide, I put all these questions. And so when it's a project manager, you click on it and the questions, she's like, ooh, that would be kind of cool. She goes, that means I would have a place to put it. And so then I talked to a couple more of the recruiters and said, how do you feel about this? Do you have your own cards? Like, what's going on? And so we were able to, as a group, come together and build out these interview questionnaires based off of technical expectations of an IT professional, and boom, we had it in the system. It was a better process. Everyone could use it. We didn't have to all go to Darcy's index cards and grab what we needed. And it worked really well. And I did not know anything about design thinking at that point in my life. We do it every day. I guarantee someone will come in and be like, oh my gosh, yeah, I did something like that before. Didn't even know that there's an actual methodology around it. But you said one of my favorite words, curiosity. It's all about being curious, being willing to ask the question.
Right. So your books break that down quite a bit. That's the whole premise of two of your books.
Yes.
And we're running out of time here, but when it comes to, okay, so I'm understanding how HR can be a strategic partner for a business owner. That has been huge. So for the person who is like me, who's just kind of, light bulbs are going off, what is a step they can take if that's something they're thinking, I wonder if I need this, or I wonder if I could get into a relationship with somebody that could be a strategic partner in the HR space? What would be the right thing for them to do, or what would you tell them to do as far as next steps?
Next steps, I would say, is, kind of take the moment and write down, what are some of the things that you feel like an HR professional could do to help you in your business? Like, what are the goals that you would want from this HR person? Because then I would then try to find an HR consultant or POE or whoever that meets those goals and expectations. Because one people that don't understand, there's a lot of depth into HR. There's a lot of people who specialize in HR. So if I'm like an amazing recruiter and you're trying to solve the problem of retaining employees, I'm not the right HR person for you because I get them in the door. I don't keep them in the door, right? So you want to make sure you're finding someone who has that expertise. And there's a lot of amazing generalists out there who can do that for you too. Like, they can have like lots of experience, but you just want to make sure they have that experience, whatever that goal is. And then, make a friend with an HR person and ask some questions and see what they say. We all know, a lot of us know each other, and we can connect you to the right person. But really it is now taking that curiosity and saying, well, how can I do this? And then just know that there's someone out there. If you just need literally like an HR, who was it? Batman phone, you just call and say, hey, I need this question. There's people who can do that. And then there's people who do projects, and there's people who can be there consistently. So there's a lot of variety out there. It's just being willing to find who you need, what level you need, and then negotiating how you can make that work for both of you.
Yeah. That's one thing I've clued into recently. The HR group is tight. There's definitely community there that I think it's valuable to just plug into as a business owner, even if you're not in the HR world. Like, it's good people to know. Yeah.
Well, in HR, we don't usually get to hang out with employees. So if we need a drinking buddy, we usually have to go find some other HR person, because
that makes sense.
We don't want to know what's happening. I think it's more of like, you do you, so that we don't hear or around, but a lot of times we're alone And that's the other thing I think that could be really cool for an owner, because you feel alone too. You have the
Right.
whole company on your back.
Mhm.
And that can be very overwhelming and hard. And you may not have the right peer group. I mean, it sounds like your mastermind could be a brilliant way for them to have some of that community.
Mhm.
But HR people are used to that. So we can help
Mhm.
you with that. We can be your partner in crime. You can, like, that's part of us. We're confidential people. That's what we're supposed to do. So lean on us, lean on the person who helps with that. They would actually appreciate having a friend
Mm.
just as
That
much as
sounds
probably
awesome.
you.
Yeah, no kidding. That sounds great. Well, Jodi, thank you for sharing your business journey. Thank you for sharing your expertise. There's a lot more to learn from Jodi. I've got the best place to reach people, or for people to get a hold of you. I've got jodibrandstetter.com. Is there a better place?
That is great. But I also have free design thinking templates out there. So if anyone's interested in getting those, you can go to Buy Design Brainery, BRAINERY.com/forward impact. And you can grab those free templates and be able to start using design thinking tomorrow.
Awesome. Well, if you're driving, you didn't catch that, I'll put it in the show notes. Definitely good resource there. Jodi Brandstetter, thank you so much for being on the Waking Life podcast. I really appreciate you.
Thank you, Scott. This was amazing. And I appreciate you too.
Thanks for listening to the Awakened Life podcast. I've been your host, Scott Landis. Hey, are you feeling overwhelmed and stressed out? It could be that you're out of balance or have a misalignment of your time and priorities. This month at Awakened Life Academy, we're featuring the Total Freedom Life Wheel exercise designed to help you uncover what might be off balance in your work, life, and other priorities. And then it helps you realign your priorities to your purpose. Check out the full training video and free download at wheel.awakenlife.com. That's wheel.awakenedlife.com for free access. Don't put this personal growth opportunity off. Go get it now and start to experience the freedom that balance can bring to your life. Go to wheel.awakenlife.com.